I have never been more confident about the future of our aviation industry than I am now. Yes, yes, the ruffians can ruffle, the cynics can cynicize, and the all-propagandists can all-propagandize. Speaking of which, the delivery dates of serial Russian aircrafts MS-21 and Super Jet 100, despite the ambitious plans voiced, cheerful speeches of officials, and powerful monetary influences in the aviation industry, were shifted by the United Aircraft Corporation to 2025 and 2026. The Ministry of Industry and Trade explained this by the objective technical difficulties of projects of this scale. However, there is nothing to be sad about, because the process of transition to domestic aircraft has become irreversible. All technical and organizational difficulties will be overcome, and even the biblical serpent tempter, not to mention the earthly tempters, the bought lobbyist for the acquisition of Western aircraft, will not be able to stop this transition now. And even more so after the West itself has refused these supplies and is doing everything by not maintaining and limiting the supply of components so that the airplanes we previously bought will fail faster and civil aviation in Russia will be destroyed. When Russia began to rebuild its aircraft industry and created the United Aircraft Corporation, we were friends with the West, believed that economics is beyond politics and actively integrated into the Western global production model. Our aircraft manufacturers did not reinvent the wheel, and when designing the new dry Super Jet 100 airplane, they took the easiest way and created it on the basis of extensive cooperation with Western manufacturers. Cooperation with Western companies, firstly, allowed to significantly reduce the period of certification and market entry of a new airplane, and secondly, should have stimulated the countries where the production of components is located to purchase our airplanes, because by doing so they could stimulate production in their countries. This international cooperation is part of the globalization process that has taken place in the world, and the major aircraft corporations were no strangers to doing the same. Again, they did exactly the same thing. If you look at the picture, you will see that the multinational American corporation Boeing produces its airplanes far from independently. Boeing is made by Japan, Australia, Canada, Italy, France, England, and of course the USA itself. Thus, by loading orders for the production of components for its airplanes, this company also provides itself with a market in them. After all, the governments of those countries, which have production facilities of this corporation, become interested in the fact that their country should buy Boeing airplanes, in addition to European Airbus airplanes. Although Airbus, being one of the largest aircraft manufacturers in the world, is doing the same thing. Look at the countries in which components for Airbus airplanes are manufactured. They are England, Germany, France, and Spain. Therefore, our domestic aircraft builders did not waste precious time in developing domestic components, mechanisms, and units. They developed and then began to produce the dry Superjet 100 in wide cooperation with Western companies from Germany, England, France, Switzerland, and the United States. The same was true for the MS-21 airplane, which was planned to be equipped with both Russian and American engines. And the composites, from which the black wing was made, the main advantage of the new airplane over foreign analogs, were also imported. Therefore, it is not surprising that after the introduction of severe sanctions and the refusal of Western companies to supply even already paid-for components, our aircraft manufacturers had to start all over again, launching an import substitution program and no longer relying on cooperation with anyone. There are some challenges along the way, but they are not insurmountable. However, they have an impact on both the timing of certification and the timing of the start of deliveries of new airplanes. After all, we had to essentially create a new airplane, import substituting just about everything. In the previous dry Superjet 100 of fully domestic components were, as you can see in the picture, only components of the main landing gear struts, fuselage components, data hub, and cockpit interior. Even the technological chassis rack, which is needed only at the assembly stage, we ordered in France. And now we see a huge workshop full of airplanes that are assembled in Russia from start to finish. It can even be called globalization in Russian, because many Russian enterprises are involved in the construction of this aircraft. 40 vendors in the first tier alone, and that's almost 100 vendors in total. Fuselage from Komsomolsk-on-Amur, engine from Rybinsk, engine control lever block from Kursk, fuel system from St. Petersburg, tires from Yaroslavl, brakes from Balashika, power supply system from Ufa, water supply system from Dubna, external lighting equipment from Ulyanovsk, glazing of aeronautical lights from Obninsk, passenger compartment glazing and chassis strut from Samara, interior of the salon from Kazan, thermal soundproofing and chairs. Of course, other components have been imported as well. Avionics, armored door to the cockpit, and even ordinary buttons, which must be pressed with a certain force and withstand up to 10,000 presses, and which the Americans used to sell us at $500 a piece. The whole country undertook the production of this airplane, in which every unit should be not worse, and preferably better than those that we purchased in France, Canada, Germany, the United States, and other Western countries, who set out to land us with sanctions and a ban on their components, but failed to do so. By building our airplanes, we are pulling the entire country's industry behind us and taking it to the next level. Now we will be able to build airplanes on our own, that is, independently of someone else's goodwill, and later, if we decide to significantly increase their production, we will be able to sell them to other non-Western countries. Despite the shift in deliveries that occurred because all of the aircraft systems had to be developed and replaced with new domestic systems, which entailed the need to ensure their joint operation on the airplane, as well as to perform a full cycle of tests. The aircraft manufacturer, as you can see, does not stand still and already builds airplanes and plans to enter the construction of 20 aircraft per year. All of the above fully applies to the MS-21, which is also undergoing import substitution and recertification tests. Will our aviation companies be able to fulfill the task set by the government and produce the number of airplanes planned by 2030? I have an affirmative answer to this question. They will be able to, as soon as all testing is completed and mass production begins. Why am I so sure of that? Because we have already seen that increasing output is not a problem for our manufacturers. For example, look at how many times our manufacturers managed to increase their output in the defense industry in 2023. Vehicles and armored weapons by a factor of 3, means of defeat by a factor of 7, communication technique and RAP at 9x. So do not be too upset about the delay in the delivery of new airplanes to airlines, because there is no need to hurry, because we need a reliable and well-assembled airplane, and therefore it is necessary to take time to conduct the entire cycle of tests and eliminate the identified shortcomings, so as not to repeat the resounding success of the Boeing 737 MAX. I also repeat that I have full confidence that the airspaces of the country will soon be furrowed by numerous domestic airplanes. And the main thing is that the import substitution process is irreversible and the full revival of the aviation industry in Russia is not far off. And I'd like to add one more thing. About the White Swan. Before the election, our president was in Kazan to helm the unique Russian strategic bomber missile carrier Tu-160M. He made a half-hour flight on this bird for a secret route and, returning to the airfield, personally gave the go-ahead to accept the airplane into the ranks of the Russian Air Force. The second name of this formidable Russian machine, which has no analogs in the world, is White Swan. The airplane was nicknamed for its white-as-snow fuselage. The Intercontinental Tu-160 was developed back in the distant 1970s. Serial production of it started in 1984, but with the collapse of the Soviet Union, you understand, suspended. Especially since in one part, all the production chains for the release of this formidable bird were cut off. In Kazan, only already released Swans were served. And so in 2018, Kazan Aircraft Specialist SKAZ Kazan Aviation Plant was assigned an extremely ambitious task to revive the production of Tu-160, but already in a new version, modernized in accordance with the spirit of the times. It's done. Our engineers have done a tremendous amount of labor, and in January of 22, he had already made his first half-hour flight. The White Swan has been modernized by our engineers. They replaced the weapon control system, made the vehicle more secure, improved the engines, added electronics, REP means, replaced all analog instruments with digital, for example, did not forget even about the comfort of the crew, added a rest block for pilots, i.e., have greatly increased the range of our handsome boy. The technology is excellent. The airplane is new and reliable, summarized Putin, returning from heaven to earth. By the way, Vladimir Putin flew an old version of the Tu-160 during Northern Fleet exercises back in 2005. Today, the White Swan is called the strongest, largest, and most powerful supersonic strike aircraft on the planet. Almost every Tu-160M, like a real ship, has its own name. Putin, if anything, flew Ilya Muromets. And then there are, for example, Valentina Tereshkova, Igor Sikorsky, or Pyotr Denikin, in honor of the famous commander-in-chief of the Russian Air Force. It is curious that by eye to distinguish the old version of the Tu-160 from the new version can only the most experienced experts on military aircraft. Same size fuselage, wings, while inside it's essentially a brand new airplane now. Today, the Tu-160M is a formidable component of our nuclear triad, capable of carrying 24 cruise missiles in its launchers at once, and ready to launch a nuclear strike against any possible enemy facilities. The White Swan is head-to-head superior to its main class rival, the American subsonic invisible B-21, capable of operating from Russian airspace without entering the range of enemy air defenses. Tu-160, by the way, passed quite a combat application, participated back during the military operation in Syria in 2015, striking Barmely positions with cruise missiles, and now, according to some media reports, is used to launch cruise missiles on the 404 side, operating from Russian airspace.